Tonight's the night. At least that's the way I'm feeling. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Bury Your Bookie. I'm Jeff DeForest, and this may be laced with a little bit of hometown bias, as tonight here in South Florida, where the program originates from. I've been living here for over 40 years. I've seen the entirety of the existence of the Florida Panther franchise. You have Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Finals, and the very unlikely and seemingly impossible proposition that the Florida Panthers, a franchise that was immersed, I mean, not even mired in mediocrity. These guys were subterranean for so many years. Whatever they did, it didn't seem to work out. They had flaky ownership, very poor decision making, had some stars. I mean, they've had Pavel Bury on the roster, an aging Yarmir Yager. Victor Kozlov was supposed to be great. They've had draft picks like Robbie Niedermeyer and Jonathan Huberdeau and others that you thought, wow, this is a guy that's going to help carry the franchise back into at least a position of contending once in a while. They had the remarkable run in 95, 96, a third-year expansion franchise, bunch of grinders that really were somewhat no names when it came to being stars in the National Hockey League that went all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals, where they got shellacked. They actually got swept by the Colorado Avalanche, and yet it seemed like they had won because it was so remarkable. And after that, a nosedive for the franchise. They were buried. They were in worse shape than even the now Miami Marlins, originally the Florida Marlins, who have disappeared from the planet and often bring to mind the idea of the C word, which is an ugly one in Major League Baseball, where we're talking about contraction. They don't mention that anymore, but they can't draw flies. I think the Trump parade drew more people than most Marlin games do. We've seen crowds of sub 1,000 at the stadium, Marlins Park, now known as, I call it Lone Shark Park. It's Lone Depot Park here in South Florida. The emptiness, I mean, it's almost like you're reading a novel by Jean-Paul Sartre and thinking, this is as existential as it gets. There's nobody here. But the Panthers were in that same situation, and yet now under the leadership of Bill Zito, who I think is certainly worthy of consideration as the best executive in all of sports. They've turned the franchise's fortunes around and made the Stanley Cup Finals. They were busted up pretty bad when they lost to the Las Vegas Golden Knights a couple of years ago. They staved off what would have been a horrifying circumstance as they blew a 3-game advantage, a 3-0 lead to Edmonton, found themselves in the throes of a Game 7. They brought out the great Hall of Famer, Roberto Luongo, one of the real staunch members of their alumni, to beat the drum there and get the crowd excited. It was almost as if Vegas bringing out Wayne Newton out of retirement to come in and inspire the crowd. And they managed to win the Stanley Cup last year, staving off Edmonton's rally and winning the Cup in a Game 7 here in South Florida. Game 6 tonight, they took a 3-2 lead, and you would have to think all sides are pointing, and we talk about this a lot on the program. Learn to read the signs from the gods of gambling, and you could never necessarily be overconfident about anything, especially in a game that's as abstract as hockey can be, where a team can be badly outplayed and a couple of weird bounces of a rolling puck puck goes in off the skate of one of your own players and can turn the fortunes of a game around. But I think all signs are pointing to the Florida Panthers clinching the Stanley Cup tonight, which scares the living daylights out of me, because to give them out as any kind of a cinch, you're asking yourself, how is it possible that Edmonton can rally in this game tonight? And if you're looking at the series as a whole, the Panthers have led for the majority of time. I think it's way out of balance. Out of maybe 200 minutes of play, the Panthers have led for like 150 of them. I'm not sure the exact number. It's like 140 to 30 something that they have held the lead, the advantage in all of these games. Now, 3 of the 5 games so far have gone to overtime, with Florida winning 2 of them. Tonight, all signs, like I said, but would point in their direction. You have a schizophrenic goaltending situation. But with the Edmonton Oilers, they can't decide who to go with. We've seen this circumstance, which made me favor the Panthers in game number 5, even going on the road in Edmonton, because, one, they're a deeper team than the Edmonton Oilers. The Oilers are missing Zach Hyman, one of their key players, and I think that's had some impact in the series, because if you look at the waves that the Panthers come at you with their third and fourth lines, including Brad Marchand, who wouldn't you like to be holding a ticket on Brad Marchand to be the Finals MVP right now? If he does anything in the game tonight and the Panthers win, I think you have to give it to him. If you were looking at the postseason overall, it would be Sam Bennett, who also was a long shot. But going into the finals, the odds to win the MVP were clearly with Connor McDavid, who won it last year, even though the Panthers won the series. They gave it to McDavid, and I believe he was like maybe plus 115 or something in that neighborhood to win the MVP. That's not happening unless they come back and rally, and he's a major factor in Game 6 and Game 7. But he's been held in relative check, no pun intended, by Alexander Barkov and the defense that's been placed upon him by Paul Maurice, who was a coach that we badly underestimated, the losingest coach in NHL history. Of course, he has many, many wins. He ranks up there, but when he was hired by Bill Zito to be the coach here, you thought, well, there's another blunder on the part of the franchise, and he couldn't have turned out to be any better or fit the team any more like a glove than he has with his approach and his ability to motivate the team from a psychological standpoint as well. But the defense on Connor McDavid has been very, very effective. Draisaitl has been okay in the series, but hasn't been overwhelming. And the rest of the Edmonton Oilers, where the hell are they? Don't see a lot of contributions coming from the rest of the Edmonton Oilers roster, whereas the Panthers are coming at you in waves. Skinner was tending goal, and then he got shelled in that one game. They pulled him for Pickard. He comes in, plays extremely well, and of course let up that late goal, but then the Oilers prevailed last time out on the Panthers' home ice. They went to Edmonton even at 2-2. So you thought, well, Pickard naturally is going to get the start. And how many times have you seen it if you're handicapping hockey? This is a good angle to take a look at, where the backup goalie comes in, especially in the postseason. The backup goalie comes in, replaces a guy who's getting shelled, and looks good. So they start him in the next game, and then you realize why he's the backup goalie. And that happened with Pickard. He got annihilated in game number 5, and the Florida Panthers were able to prevail 5-2 on the Edmonton home ice. So I'm thinking they wrap it up tonight. There's a little schizophrenia with Sergei Bobrovsky, the Panthers goalie, and there was some speculation here in town that maybe they should have yanked him. Not a lot of it, but a couple of analysts were saying, oh, they should have pulled him there in that game number 4. He was giving up all kinds of greasy goals. But they stuck with him. It's pretty clear cut that he's their man. I think he's outplayed both of the goalies in the series, although he has been suspect and vulnerable in different spots. But he's managed to make some spectacular saves at key moments. I think that comes into play tonight. And I'm expecting the scheduling of the parades and the Stanley Cup parties, which were sensational here last year. And the probability of the Florida Panthers winning back-to-back Stanley Cup championships, my God. Now, if you bet them before the season, and they were the second choice going into the postseason to win the Stanley Cup. So you were getting somewhere at plus 650 in that neighborhood if you bet them before the series. Right now, I would imagine prohibitive favorites up 3-2 with 2 shots, 2 swings at it. But I don't think it goes any further than tonight. So with that being said, look, it's hockey, and like in anything in sports, anything can happen. But it's a little strange to feel this level of confidence that the Panthers will win the Stanley Cup tonight. So your final probably will be, if you're a follower of Bury Your Bookie, Edmonton 3, Panthers nothing in a dull effort, and they go back to Edmonton for a decisive game number 7. But we're thinking we're going to be in celebration mode here tonight. But many different things happening in gambling. I put this up on my Facebook page yesterday. It got a surprisingly decent response. Prop bet, and I don't know if this was available anywhere. If some clever bookie might have thought this up, I'm not sure. You guys would probably know better than I would. If there was a proposition bet with Giancarlo Stanton returning to the Yankee lineup last night and Shohei Ohtani returning to the mound for the Los Angeles Dodgers. Now, we knew Ohtani, in all likelihood, was only going to pitch 1 inning. He threw 28 pitches, gave up a run, 2 hits in the first inning for the Dodgers in their 6-3 win over the Padres. And you had Stanton coming back to the lineup for the Yankees for the first time this season after the usual nursing of injuries. I don't know. Is it the juice? What is it about this guy? He's as fragile as he possibly could be. But when he's in the lineup, we know that he can hit the ball hard. He had hit, 59 home runs 1 year with the Marlins before he went to the Yankees. and has been effective in spots for the New York Yankees, although you would have to say that for the amount of money that he's being paid, productivity to payment has certainly been disappointing. But and his frequent injuries that have kept him out for extended period of times makes that contract look especially lopsided in favor of the player and not the team. But the prop bet would have been who was going to have more strikeouts? Ohtani as a pitcher in his one inning of work for the Dodgers last night against the Padres, or Giancarlo Stanton, who is very capable of striking out all 4 times in a game when he's in midseason form, coming back and shaking off the ring rust for the New York Yankees? I got a zillion responses on that, and it turned out Ohtani, with 0 strikeouts in his inning of work, was eclipsed by Giancarlo Stanton, who struck out once in the ballgame while going 2 for 4. Actually looked pretty good in a 1-0 loss in 11 innings to the Los Angeles Angels. So you would have won, and I would have gone with Stanton because I'm thinking Ohtani's probably not going to strike out the sides here, his first inning back of work. And Stanton is perfectly capable of striking out all 4 times in his at-bats. An interesting aspect, as was looking at the odds that are posted in-game. Now, there are many ways to get destroyed gambling. And our good friend Mike Jones, who was with us on the program yesterday, he's an old-school guy like I am. People don't even talk about who's going to win games anymore against the point spread. Everybody, when you go places, what's the first thing a guy does? He breaks out his phone and he goes, "Hey, look at that, man. I had 5 out of 6. The only thing I missed, this guy fouls out with 7 points, and I ended up losing a chance for $25 to win 900." And that's great, except you're asking yourself, how is it that these networks like FanDuel and DraftKings, these outfits that are taking bets right now, the 2 most prominent ones, and any of the apps that you're on. Here in South Florida, you have to bet through the Hard Rock Hotel because of some clandestine, underhanded attache full of cash that was passed on to the governor, Ron DeSantis, by the Seminole tribe of Indians that controls the Hard Rock. Suddenly they have exclusivity on virtually everything, including sports betting, which everybody knew was going to be worth $1 trillion here in the state of Florida, because the state is nothing but scam artists and degenerates. So they somehow get exclusivity. But and people have taken to just ignoring what used to be the staple of all gambling, and that is the side with or without the points, maybe some money line action, and over/under totals. But now with in-game betting, I tune in the Yankee game, see what was going on, and they flash up immediately. Of course, they're posting the odds. The Angels and the Yankees were tied at 0 in the 9th inning, going into the 9th inning of the game, and you could have got plus 185 if you took the Angels. I was tempted to take a swipe at that, thinking that looks a little short. So you would have to think the Yankees at home eventually were going to bust out and score a run, especially when they start putting a guy automatically at second base. Maybe they get an inning of decent relief work, and they did, and they win the thing in 10. But at plus 185, I was tempted to take a swing with the Los Angeles Angels, who did win the game 1-0. But I'm looking at this and thinking, well, there it is. I've gone away from my own philosophical instincts here when it comes to gambling. And I'm starting to look at some of these prop bets, and you have to ask yourself, how is it that FanDuel and DraftKings were in a position to buy their own television networks now? It's only a matter of time before FanDuel buys like CBS in one of these transactions. They've bought a lot of the regional cable systems, a couple of them here in South Florida and around the state of Florida, now owned by FanDuel. It's called FanDuel TV. I'm sure there are plenty of these outlets in whatever state you happen to be watching the program from, whatever country for that matter. They're making this money off of these guys that are betting these $5, $10, $15, $25 enormous multi-component parlays, much more so than they are about getting the money from some guy that's betting $20,000 a game against the point spread, which is a form of insanity that I've yet to explore in my lifetime, no matter how much I love gambling and love talking about gambling. But so there has to be something to that. I believe you really, and people are going to think I'm ridiculous to say that you have to really just avoid that temptation, no matter how much of an instinct you have for it, or it'll be only a matter of time before you're tapping into that whatever's left of your 401k after these tariffs, and just burying yourself in a sea of unwise decisions, chasing. Never send good money after bad. So if you're losing a ball game, I don't know. And the magic question you're always asking yourself is to hedge or not to hedge, the Shakespearean question, to be or not to be. I don't know that it's good to start practicing betting a lot of in-game stuff, although I would have had a winner last night. So from a mind bet standpoint, you're cashing a ticket. But when you start putting cash up on those things, somehow it always seems to go the opposite way. We had baskets last night. It's always good to have some inside information, is it not? We talk about this a lot on the program. Who knew that Tyrese Halliburton had a calf injury that he was nursing? I had no idea. We were talking yesterday on the program about how the 9.5 points was very tempting with the Indiana Pacers. They've been in every game except the second one. And even in game two, where they weren't able to muster up their usual rally, which they've been exhibiting all throughout the postseason, come back from the dead many, many times, actually won games outright. That led it into our theory of wait till your team is hopelessly out of it, or a team is, especially in the NBA postseason, and then heavy up on the money line. Here we are contradicting ourselves, saying just go ahead and wait till you're in the most desperate of positions and start betting. But last night, if you had known that Halliburton was going to have 4 points in the game because he was compromised by this calf injury, which seemed to exacerbate itself as the game went on, would you not have been very tempted to go ahead and lay the 9.5 with the Oklahoma City Thunder? Now, they only won by 11 points. You covered by 1.5, so you even had to sweat that out. And after being up 18 early in the game in the second quarter, the Indiana Pacers made another one of those runs where they whittled it down to 2 in spite of Halliburton's ineffectiveness in a contest. So there's always time to start gargling with Xanax and thinking, I don't know if I can take this anymore. But it was interesting to see how that turned out. But had you known that Halliburton was compromised, I think you would have been extremely tempted to go ahead and lay the 9.5 with Oklahoma City at home. They now find themselves in a commanding situation in the postseason, up 3-2. I believe it's 82% of the time. The team that's leading, 82% of the time, the team that's leading a series 3-2 in the NBA ends up winning the series overall. So they'll go back Thursday night to Indiana. Halliburton's status still somewhat suspect. Probably going to play in a game, according to Rick Carlisle, says he's likely to give it a go. If he's not effective, I'm not sure that you can embrace the idea that Indiana is going to be able to hold off Oklahoma City, who played great. By the way, this Jalen Williams, 40 points in a game last night. I don't know if you were on that prop, but what an impressive young man he is. I've seen him now twice in the postseason or post-game interviews. And, man, I mean, he's kind of like Josh Allen was for me, where even being in Miami and the fact that Josh Allen was playing with the Buffalo Bills, who routinely destroy the Dolphin seasons. And even though they haven't won a Super Bowl with Allen and have been disappointing late in playoffs the last several seasons, you see interviews with Josh Allen, and you're thinking, man, I really like this guy. Even though he plays for a team that I usually root with every emotional fiber in my body against. And Jalen Williams is in that category. I mean, just well composed for a young guy that's a budding superstar in the NBA, already getting a lot of recognition. Some people are saying he's the best number 2 option in the NBA as we speak. But very impressive. He was on with Scott Van Pelt last night on ESPN after the ball game. And every time I see this guy speak, I'm thinking, could you be any more well-grounded and have any deeper of an understanding about what it takes to win without putting your ego out there first? And Jalen Williams exhibits all of the qualities that you would love to see in a ball player, especially a young ball player that's emerging as a star. So very impressive performance by him. I hope you had him in the over total in your prop bets, but 40-point output in the ball game last night as Oklahoma City appears winning, and Scott Foster didn't hurt them any in Game 4 in that officiating. He's known as the extender. Because Indiana going up 3-1, you would have loved their prospects, not knowing about the Halliburton injury, to win the series. But when Foster got involved there and started putting Oklahoma City on the stripe no matter what happened, including that one play, which I thought was the critical turning point play in the ballgame when Gilgeous-Alexander shoves Neesmith into the paint, then takes about 4 steps and puts up a jumper. It goes in like he was Earl of Pearl Monroe from the left side baseline. And that was the dagger that finally put the nail in the coffin there for Indiana in that game. And then, of course, anybody that tells you, hey, well, what a genius I am. I gave you Oklahoma City to cover the 6 point spread. That was one of the luckiest covers I think you'll ever see. Largely triggered by Foster and then Matherin missing 3 or 4 free throws. Sometimes you're right about everything in gambling, and you end up on the losing side. So don't necessarily bury your head in the sand and go away from the systems that have been working for you, because yeah, your philosophy, you're absolutely correct on the money. All your analysis, and that's the unfortunate thing. That's why they call it gambling and not winning, because you can still end up getting stuck for whatever it was that you put up on a game. We have to give some credit here, a shout out, and I don't know how prominent this is in the eyes of many. We had the professor give out a couple of picks in the College Baseball World Series. A lot of fun, great atmosphere. I've been to the CWS a couple of times back in the early 90s when I was doing play-by-play on the radio for Miami Hurricanes baseball. They had a great program under Ron Frazier, right up there with USC and Rod Dado, although not quite as many wins, but always were a presence in the College Baseball World Series. That sort of continued after Frazier retired, and the program was back in the College World Series 2 of the 3 years I think I was covering the team. Great event, great grassroots sporting event. New stadium. They used to play at Rosenblatt. They're now at Schwab Stadium, which appears to be a hell of an upgrade from what was. I did enjoy, because I like old arenas and ballparks, but and I did enjoy the kind of rickety atmosphere you had at Rosenblatt. It was really tough to hit home runs in that stadium, and a very weird perspective from an announcing standpoint, because the ball would look like it was going to rocket out of the park and then get called. You almost felt like John Sterling, where he would say, there's a drive. It is high. It is far. It is. And then Susan Wallman would chime in and go, John, it's caught by the second baseman just on the side of the infield grass. And you're like, wait a minute. This guy had the ball out of the park. And it looked like shots were going to rocket out of the park there, and they didn't. I think you're seeing more home runs being hit in the Schwab Stadium than you did before in the College Baseball World Series, although I want to say the games have been largely low scoring. But this Gage Wood pitches a no-hitter yesterday, and it was only the third one, surprising, in College Baseball World Series history. Only the third no-hitter, and the last one was accomplished in 1960. So congratulations, Gage Wood, who doubtless will be a first-round pick, especially if anybody witnessed this performance, where he's bringing it late after 100 pitches at 97 miles an hour, and seemed to have the kind of competitive attitude. He was like Bob Gibson out there in a way. He was performing. But when you think about all the great pitchers, I mean, you had Paul Skeens a couple of years ago pitching in the College Baseball World Series. Back in the day, you had Texas with Roger Clemens, Greg Swindell. Florida State had a pitcher, Paul Wilson, you would have thought was perfectly capable of a no-no. Surprising to see. And I don't know if there was a prop bet on that. Did anybody have a ticket on that? Somewhere in the world, somebody probably had the Arkansas pitcher, Gage Wood, pitching a no-hitter, and I would imagine the odds, they had to be phenomenal if this was something that hadn't happened since 1960. So hopefully you were on board with that. I have the Panthers tonight. I'm going to say 4-1 Panthers. Shaky goaltending for the Edmonton Oilers. Can they rise to the occasion? I don't think so. I don't think Skinner is all that good. Bobrovsky hasn't been brilliant in the series. You'd love to be holding an MVP ticket on Brad Marchand, who had to be huge in terms of odds, because he wasn't even mentioned in the top 5 players that I saw, and you wouldn't have figured him to be the MVP of the series. It's either going to be him or possibly Sam Bennett if the Panthers clinch tonight, as those two guys have really been the major impetus behind what's been happening for the Florida Panthers. You're not going to give it to Alexander Barkov, who was their favorite player in that category. He hasn't scored enough, but if you were looking at a critical component of this championship, if indeed they can accomplish it tonight, Barkov's play on Connor McDavid, and overall, if you could call it a floor game like they have in basketball, this guy's been spectacular in that category. So good luck to our Panthers tonight. We're hoping to clinch the series 4-1, our prediction here. Let's see if that happens. Good luck on all of your wagers. We'll have more on the baskets, and you would have to get an update on the Halliburton injury to have any faith with Oklahoma City laying, I believe, only 5. They haven't been great on the road. They did manage to win that game, largely, I think, fueled by the officiating blunders of one Scott Foster and his crew. But because the end game certainly seemed to turn in Oklahoma City's favor from an officiating standpoint. And I'm sure most people are confident that they'll probably wrap things up if Halliburton isn't 100%. But we're looking for a parade tonight. And good luck with your wagers on the game. Be nice to be, as I said, holding a ticket on Marchand to be the MVP. He scores a goal tonight and the Panthers win. You can just gift wrap that and count on the money being in your wagering account tomorrow. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in. We'll have Scotty M on the program with us tomorrow. And, of course, Mike Jones back with us on Thursday, the professor on Friday. For everybody connected with the show and the people here at nofilter.net, I'm Jeff DeForest. Good luck, everybody. Hope you find a way today, whether it's with prop bets, in-game betting, or just taking my advice here, which may be misguided, and figuring that the Panthers are going to close it out tonight. Good luck on all your wagers, and we hope to see you tomorrow after you've buried your bookie.